Another Wednesday's come and gone, and I've got some comics. Let's talk about them. Hey, welcome to 9 Panel Grid. This week, we've seen glimpses into the near future, blood-soaked tales of revenge, and lessons learned from both masters and apprentices. But this week, we're going to kick things off here with Batman number 148, written by Chip Zdarsky with artwork by Jorge Jimenez. So this book sees kind of the culmination of everything that Chip has been building to with the failsafe arc. Bruce Wayne Batman is now taking on Batman, the failsafe Zur-En-Arrh, and it's seen him reunite with the Bat family and kind of mend some of the wounds that he has inadvertently caused. This was an okay issue. I think that Chip has definitely been weaving a story that's been very good, but not necessarily great. I do like how he's kind of started building upon some of the previous things that he had done in the Batman story, The Knight, as well as kind of building on some of the things that other writers had worked on with Batman, such as Grant Morrison, kind of working with Zur-En-Arrh. It's been a really fun ride. However, it hasn't necessarily been the best Batman story I think that I've read. Not definitely not the best one in recent history. Jorge Jimenez, again, he delivers some really solid artwork in this, but it's kind of weird when the bar is set as high as it is for him. I feel like this issue was a little bit of a letdown. It was almost like Jorge Jimenez on autopilot, which is still, I mean, quite frankly, better than a lot of artists on their best days. However, it did kind of, leave me wanting more. There's a lot of epic splash pages in this, which are really fantastic, but I think we're missing some of the dynamic things that he's been known to do. Now, what I will say, though, is that Tomu More definitely delivers where he does a lot of the heavy lifting, I guess I should say, where Jimenez, kind of pulls back a little bit. There is a lot of fantastic pops of color. I think it does a lot to deliver some of those moments and really make them pop off of the pages as you see them. So overall, I think this was a very good book. It was a very good ending to the arc that we've been building up on, and I'm kind of curious on where Chip Zdarsky's going to take this next. All right, with our next book up, we're going to talk about The Ultimates number 1, written by Dennis Camp with artwork by Juan Frigeri. So this book really feels like the glue that's going to be holding the new Ultimate Universe together. What we're seeing right now is that we kind of jump 6 months in the past and 6 months into the future within the Ultimate Universe, and we're seeing the ultimates, what they brand themselves as, kind of formulate their plan on how they're going to repopulate this world with the superheroes that we know should have been there, and try to undo some of the things that the maker had done previously to kind of he was being the puppet master basically of everything that was happening. So they're planting seeds and they're working on trying to make the world a better place and more akin to what they know is existing in the 616 universe. They hit some speed bumps along the way, but I think that this is going to be overall a really entertaining story. I really enjoyed Dennis Camp as a writer overall, and he does some things in here that really play with, like I said, the overall nature of the Ultimate Universe. I mean, this is truly, I feel like, going to be the glue. Now, part of the downside of that, though, with this being such a book that is going to have an epic scope, is that I feel like the artwork kind of, I don't know, doesn't deliver on that. We have epic work being done by Stefano Caselli. We have epic artwork being done by Marco Cacchetto. And Peach Momoko obviously has her own unique flair that you either love or hate. A lot of people do really love it, myself included. This kind of just feels like it either really hits or it really kind of misses for me. And it's kind of like a juggling act. So it was definitely a good experience. It was a good kickoff to this universe, and I like I said, the narrative really drove the story forward, and I appreciate that, and I want to see where it's going to go. It had its hooks in me. However, I feel like I feel like something needed to be delivered more so in the art department. But if you pick this up, let me know what you were thinking. All right, we're going to jump into X-Men number 35, written primarily by Jerry Duggan, Al Ewing, and Kieran Gillen, with a variety of artists here kind of known for their work on X-Men. So this definitely is the end cap. This sees the finality, the end of the Krakoan era. And it's an okay issue. This is a hard thing to talk about because do you talk about the book itself or do you talk about the possibility, the things that maybe we could have had the Krakoan era worked out the way that it was originally intended? It's a hard conversation to have. This issue in particular, I can say that part of the narrative works out really well. I feel like it does a lot of things to really kind of celebrate the journey that we've gone on over these last couple of years. However, I do feel like there's parts of it that are really clunky. Part of comics, especially big two comics, is that when an arc comes to an end, you got to put the toys back in the toy chest. And some of that works out really well when we're setting up what's going to be the new X-Men coming down the line here with Gail Simone and Jed McKay taking over some of the flagship titles. So it sets those stories up for success, but there's a couple other things here, particularly with characters that I really, really grew to love because they were so interesting and captivating. And some of them just kind of fall into the old cliche tropes that they've kind of been known for prior to the Krakoan era, and that was really disheartening. I understand the reasoning why, but man, like I feel like there's still, even with new creative teams coming on, there's still things that you can build on as opposed to like coming backwards. So it was kind of a bummer if I'm being completely honest here. The artwork again is really hit and miss. I feel like with some of these milestone issues and these celebratory things, what they end up doing is they get a litany of artists, right? They get like all of these celebrated artists that maybe had worked on these titles previously, and they all do 1 or 2 pages, which is great. I love seeing artwork from people that I really admire and really do great work. However, when they're given 1 to 2 pages, it ends up kind of just pulling me out of the story, especially when their styles are so different from one another. When you have like people like John Romita Jr. right next to Jeremy Opeña, it just takes you completely out of the story. It was hard. I don't know what else to say. I do appreciate what they all delivered on here, albeit was it the best thing that it could have been? I don't know. Maybe not. It's kind of hit and miss. So I'm gonna take the good along with the bad with this one and just say it's an okay issue. All right, we have a lot of indies to get through this week, so we're going to jump right in with Bear Pirate Viking Queen #2, written by Sean Lewis with artwork by Jonathan Marks. So this continues our really trippy story that we got with issue #1. And what we're seeing is we get a little bit of the backstory of our Viking character in this, and we see a little bit of his upbringing, and we kind of see his storyline, where he's going. We're seeing that he is on this revenge path, specifically against the British Empire. And it looks like there's a lot of backstory involving historical, things that have happened here with the British's conquering of the Viking lands in the 900s. So it's kind of playing with a lot of cool things. And what I'm seeing here and what the way that I'm interpreting this is that as opposed to a story having a narrative and then being drawn towards some of the things that are happening, it almost feels like the artwork is driving this story and the narrative is almost taking the artist's approach on this. Everything is very surreal and very expressive. Jonathan Marks's artwork, I mean, the best way I could describe it would be controlled chaos. I mean, there is just like paint splatter everywhere. There's thick, chunky lines. Everything feels like as if you ran your thumb across that page, you can almost feel the raised paint lines, the raised ink lines on this. Really fantastic stuff, really trippy visuals on this. And I feel like Sean Lewis is just leaning into that a little bit with the way that he's writing the story. This is not holding your hand by any means. This is really something to be experienced. It's not something that they feel like is being delivered in a lot of comic books right now. It's challenging, not necessarily in the scope of what they're trying to say, but maybe in the scope of how they're saying it. So, with that being said, Bear Pirate Viking Queen #2, if you read it, let me know your thoughts. And with a new #1 this week, let's talk about Falling in Love on the Path to Hell #1, written by Jerry Duggan with artwork by Gary Brown. So this was a pretty cool issue. I was kind of excited for this. What we're seeing is we see dual stories here. We see that Death is uniting both this gunslinger character from the West and this samurai character from the East, both kind of on these paths of revenge that don't necessarily work out to their benefit. Jerry Duggan is writing a pretty cool story here, and it's kind of leaving a lot of room for the artist, Gary Brown, to have a lot of fun with this. The way the issue is structured is that we have our two separate tales, and Duggan is kind of writing this really exposition heavy beginning, kind of setting the stage for these characters. But in doing so, it doesn't necessarily last all that long. It kind of delivers a lot of information at you right away and then eases back and lets Brown's artwork tell a lot of the story, which tends to be these action packed parts of the story itself. A lot of blood. I mean, this book has more blood than 7 John Wick movies combined, and it's kind of awesome. I think Brown gets to do a lot of really fun things in this. And it's not really splash page heavy necessarily either. I feel like he does a lot of good work in pacing the story and also delivering these action beats in a way that really makes sense to the page. And it's not something that's necessarily excessive. I feel like it's to the benefit of the actual story itself, especially knowing, like I said, how parts of the story are really exposition and narrative heavy. So this was a really surprisingly cool issue number one. I didn't really know what I was going to be getting into, especially considering my recent history with Duggan being on the X books, and they were kind of a letdown, if I'm being honest. This one kind of, it raised the bar for me a little bit. I'm excited to see where this is going to go, and I'm definitely going to be seeing what issue two is going to be delivering. All right, the next book on the list, we have Kaya, number 19, written and drawn by Wes Craig. So this is one of the in-between issues that we've seen Wes Craig deliver with that kind of take place in between different arcs of the story. And this one in particular does something completely different than anything we've seen. We're jumping into the future now of Kaya, and we get a glimpse of what's going to be happening, what's coming down the pipeline. And some of the things I gotta say, as an avid reader of this, as a person who has put this book on a pedestal because I feel like it's just that good, I'm getting worried. Not because I think the book is doing something I don't want it to do, but the characters are in places that I did not expect them to be, and I don't know how they got there. And one omission of a character in particular made me particularly interested to see where exactly this story is going, especially knowing how issues 17 and 18 ended. So we see Kaya in the future with her band of rebels, and they're trying to free some prisoners. Real simplistic kind of adventure story, but some of the things we've seen is that, like, visually she has definitely aged, and like not aged like she's like weathered, but she's grown up now. She seems more mature, she seems more sure of herself, and we've seen there has been moments throughout this series where she's doubted her own actions. You don't see that at all here. Another thing is that her trademark golden arm has definitely taken on a different form. And I don't know if this is a completely different thing. I don't know if this is a evolution, I guess maybe you can say, of what her arm was, but it's truly fascinating. This definitely it leaves a lot of questions to be answered, and being that it's Kaya, I want those answers so badly. I can't wait for the next arc of this to start. If you're not reading Kaya, you definitely need to get yourself caught up because this is one of the best books that come out month after month. And we have yet another new number one this week. Let's talk about Profane number one, written by Peter Milligan with artwork by Ruel Fernandez. So this has been a really cool introductory issue. What we're seeing is a detective take on a murder mystery case that ends up hitting a little bit closer to home than he could have anticipated. And when I say it hits close to home, I don't think it can hit closer to home than what it does without me giving away a couple spoilers in this story. So Peter Milligan happens to be one of my favorite writers. I think he's done some of the most interesting stories within the last 30 years in comic books. And this feels very akin to something that we've seen recently, especially in Matt Kint's books Bang and Subgenre, where we see it definitely leans on some of the detective noir story tropes, but it does so in a very metatextual way. It's kind of I feel like it knows what it's doing and it knows that it's delivering on a very tropey level. However, if you didn't get that within a detective story, you might feel like something is also lacking in a way as well. Raul Fernandez, I've never seen his artwork, or at least I'm not aware that I've seen his artwork in the past, but I think he did a really good job on this. There's a lot of things that are going on in this story that's he delivers great angles on his work. It definitely leans into the mysterious aspects of this story, and it's almost as if he's drawing things from in a way that you don't get to be told the whole story until it's absolutely intended that you do. So it was a really cool, fun story. I'm interested to see where this goes. What I really want to see from it is kind of taking and delivering these tropes in a new, inventive way. This kind of it starts to do that, but it doesn't fully deliver that just yet. But if it goes where it feels like it could be going, I think this is going to deliver on a lot of cool things here that are going to play out really well. With our next book up, let's talk Scarlet #1, written by Kelly Thompson with artwork by Marco Ferrari. This has been a really cool introductory issue. We see Scarlet infiltrate a ninja stronghold, I should say, where she's on this mission where she's supposed to be gathering intel, and we know that with these kind of books, things go wrong. And when she sees someone from her past, things go really awry, and she has to take action. This was a cool issue in a way that I feel like the Energon storylines haven't been. In a way that every other Energon book feels like it has definitely been interconnected, and it's been melding all of these G.I. Joe centric things with Transformer things. It's been a mashing of all of these properties. Where this, I feel, leans more on the G.I. Joe realm of the story than almost anything else has in the past. I don't think that there's any ties to Transformers whatsoever, and that's not necessarily a bad thing either. This lets us kind of just like be with the characters from the G.I. Joe universe and kind of just live in that well, I shouldn't say realistic, but grounded arena as opposed to the spacefaring alien Transformers. The action in this book is awesome. They are doing some really, really fun things on this. It's just like enthralling artwork that just feels so dynamic and so kinetic. And there's some particular pages in here that are just they're just free flowing. You're gonna see things in here that's they lead your eyes throughout the entirety of the page here, and I think that Marco does a really fantastic job. The other thing is that with that dynamic quality, it feels like it belongs in the Energon universe. However, I feel like it's also doing its own thing. It doesn't have that, it's not trying to emulate Daniel Warren Johnson or Jorge Corona or Tom Riley or any of the other artists that we've seen here. I feel like it's something into unto itself, but still belonging in that world, if that makes sense. So Scarlet #1, another fantastic #1 from the Energon universe. Definitely worthwhile reading if you're a Kelly Thompson fan or a G.I. Joe fan. But if you picked it up, let me know if you're thinking. Okay, it seems to be the week of new #1s here, so let's throw out another one here. We're going to talk Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Alpha #1, with the main story being written by Jason Aaron with artwork by Chris Burnham. So this was kind of a challenging book, if I'm being completely honest. I had not been reading the TMNT books here for quite a while, so I'm completely lost. But I was really excited when I heard that Jason Aaron was going to be taking over the book, and this was supposed to be the introductory portion of that. It was my reasoning for picking this up is that this was going to lead us into what his arc was going to be. I felt completely lost by this, though. The story revolves around Donatello specifically being held captive by some prisoners, where he's being put towards into some battles, basically almost like a gladiator-esque type of thing. And I don't know, like this didn't really do anything for me narratively. I don't know how we got here, and maybe that would be spelled out more if I were in tune with what was happening previously. But, part of a new writer coming on is that they're supposed to either catch you up or deliver something on here that helps you kind of identify and understand where we're at and where we're going. And this story just didn't do that for me. It's not that I felt lost because the story was very simplistic, but I just wasn't excited to be joining in on this world. The artwork, though, I have to say, is the only thing that got me through this issue. Chris Burnham delivers what I have come to love about a good Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle book. I kind of want that old school Peter Laird, Kevin Eastman approach. I want big thick ink lines. I want grit. I want texture. I want to feel something on the page here. I don't want it to be slick and glossy. I don't want it to appear to be a modern day comic book. He delivers on those things and he delivers on them masterfully. I just wish that the story that we were delivered kind of held that same standard. Now that's not to say that Jason Aaron's run is going to be bad, and I'm still going to, see what he does with these new number ones that come out here as they follow each individual turtle, and I'm sure we'll come together at one point. But this issue, as being the thing that was supposed to kind of springboard me into the world that he's going to be crafting, kind of a letdown. Okay, that last review to give, while honest, was kind of a bummer. So let's talk about something that really excited me. We're going to talk about the runner-up pick of the week, and this week it's going to be The Boy Wonder #2, written and drawn by Junie Baugh. I loved issue 1 of this, and issue 2 took that to new heights. What we're seeing is Damian is kind of going from previous Robin to previous Robin, and without it being delivered in a way, he's kind of learning and growing and kind of seeing these aspects that made each individual Robin great. First with Dick in issue 1, and now he's meeting up with Jason Todd in issue 2. And he's going to Jason particularly for his tracking abilities as he's working his way towards these demons, the thing that he sees as the goal that is going to let Bruce Batman kind of see him in a new light. He feels like he's taking on this task to show that he can be the best Robin that there is. And through this journey he's learning and growing from the other previous Robins as well. Now, the interesting aspect of this is that in issue 1, we saw Dick Grayson, and Dick Grayson is mature, he's confident in himself, he is just everything you would expect from a superhero. Jason is not that. That's not to say that there's nothing to learn from him, though. It was a really fantastic dynamic between these two characters where Damien is so headstrong and he's so sure of himself, but that's not to say that he's ready to have those, feelings about himself, because he needs to deliver on everything that comes along with that, right? He needs to be the hero and be able to take action on things 24/7. Jason lives in a world that he sees through the lens of failure. And there's a lot to be learned. And what Damien does not understand yet, especially in his early years as being Robin, is that lessons are learned through failure. And this is the time that he learns that lesson from Jason. And it's this really fantastic narrative where I feel like they learn from one another, where Jason learns confidence and he learns that no one looks at him as a failure. And in fact, it wasn't his failure, the things that happened to him as he was a Robin. And in fact, it was a success. It should be something that is looked upon as a success, that he not only survived the experience, but he has grown from that experience. And Damien gets to see that, and he gets to see something completely different than what he experienced with Grayson previously. Man, I love this book, and I haven't even talked about the artwork yet. Junie Baugh delivers some really really fantastic work on this, being that he's the artist and the writer, and it's lifted up both by the colors of the book as well as the lettering on the book. The lettering on this, is particularly the caption boxes and the lettering itself, they do so much to just lift this book up and just to make it a wholly different experience. They work and they intermingle so well with the paneling. They work really well with the characters that are delivering the lines. There's coloring that's used in the particular fonts to kind of decipher who's saying what and where. It makes it really crisp, really clean, and a really easy read. That's just super appreciated. So The Boy Wonder #2, runner-up pick of the week. Let me know if you read it. All right, and with our top comic of the week, let's talk Precious Metal #1, written by Darcy Van Polgeest with artwork by Ian Bertram. I was so excited to read this book. If you haven't read Little Bird yet, which I believe released in 2019, this is a prequel set 35 years in the past of that story. And what we're seeing is there's a character by the name of Max, and he's a tracker, kind of reluctantly going through the ins and outs of his days, where he doesn't get too attached to the people that he's searching for, and he definitely doesn't get attached to the people that he is then selling these other individuals to. What happens in this story, though, is that we see that he gets intertwined with some character that looks like he has some modifications done that are very much akin to some modifications that have been performed on Max, our main character. And we see the inner workings of this world that we've seen previously in Little Bird, and it just kind of builds and fleshes out some of the societal structures that we can't come to know in Little Bird, specifically revolving around religion. um it just kind of like it just it swells, right? It builds out on some of the things that we've known, and it does so in such a really fantastic, interesting way, because we're seeing the beginnings of some of the things that we've seen the endings to in Little Bird. And Ian Bertram with his artwork, man, like it is just so detailed and it is so textured. Like his work, it's not, I wouldn't say it's gritty, but he has a way of delivering like the stippling technique where that really makes everything feel very tactile and coarse. On top of that, some of the things that I was speaking to, like the modifications on these characters, man, they are just they're rendered so magnificently by Bertram. It's really weird, trippy experience that is done in a way that, like, I can't really quite comprehend what he's doing. I can't put it into words. All I can really say is that it's magnificent. It's breathtaking. It's something to behold with your own two eyes. Again, this is like it's a hard issue to really kind of put into words beyond the fact that you really need to read it. And if you've read Little Bird, it's going to make it all the more worthwhile as you take this journey. I'm definitely interested to see where Max goes with this, how the child that he was tracking kind of intertwines with this, and how it plays into some of the memories here that he is starting to unlock as this world builds out and grows. But with that being said, let me know if you picked up Precious Metal #1. What were your thoughts, and where do you think it's going? All right, so that's what I got for you this week. But tell me, what did you pick up and what did you read and what were your thoughts on them? Be part of the panel, leave me a comment down below, and if you found benefit from this video, do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe. Thanks again for watching. We'll talk to you next week.